So, I'm here with Andy McNicol.
Cheers.
Champion.
For the
Cheers
time
to
being,
that.
yeah.
For the time being.
I wish I had a better way of becoming famous.
Andy's got a cunning competition strategy, which I came across in the hike and fly, Dragon hike and fly race. And it involves taking the competitors, your chief competitors, and plying them with beer the night before the race starts, and then off you go on hike and fly.
Yeah, it works. It's good.
Works very well.
It's a really good strategy, that.
Yeah, you took me down.
Yeah. And Wes, I think, as well, a little bit.
So I'm going to chat with Andy about a situation that happened recently, which is kind of a shocker and a surprise to everybody when it happens. But it's one of the classic accidents that can happen to you. And it can even happen to champions. So we're going to talk through low-level asymmetric collapse, because that's what happened to Andy, and he's got his foot up and he's recovering now on the long road to recovery. Tell us your story. What happened?
So I booked a trip to Tenerife with my brother. It was beginning of November, so just starting to work over there, and I got my good friend Luis who lives over there. And we'd had like a few days flying over there. It was pretty, like really mild conditions, really. It was quite nice, you know, like, pretty relaxing.
No full on flying at all.
Not at all, like really relaxing.
Compared to the comp circuit that you've been doing and,
No.
you know,
No.
other days that you've been flying, you've had far more intense.
Yeah, so it was really relaxed. I've just been cruising around with my brother, and the following day I phoned up Luis, who is another comp pilot, really good pilot. And we got up to launch and super relaxed, we were joking around. The wind was a little bit cross, it was like 45 degrees cross from launch. Light wind,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe 5-10 kilometers an hour, something like that. A decent enough wind coming up launch to pick your glider up without having to run too fast. And I must have pulled my glider up like 10 seconds after him. So I was literally like right behind him. Flew out away from launch, turned left, and we don't fly far away from launch, just turn left. There's one gully, like it's a volcanic gully. And then on the second volcanic gully, I saw Luis get some lift, he turned. And then as I hit the lift, I got a big sort of 50% asymmetric on the side of the hill. I thought that I leant away from it nicely. And then there's the other side of this volcanic canyon in front of us. I then remember thinking I've got to try and like turn it away from the hill a little bit. And I remember trying to like turn it right a little bit and seeing the flying side start to peel back a tiny bit. And I thought, can't do that. And then obviously as soon as I let go of that then turned it 90 degrees. It turned it 90 degrees and then it opened up fairly quickly. Okay. It opened up reasonably quickly, but obviously diving towards the ground. And then I think after I'd kind of swung through, I think I had a few seconds, like maybe 3 seconds before the impact. And at this point I'm done for anyway. I'm below, I've got a canyon kind of both sides, and I'm below the height of that canyon, and the canyon's too narrow to sensibly put a turn in. So I knew I was kind of like, right, I've got to crash here. And I remember thinking I should stall it because I'm obviously going fast because I've just swung through on the glider. So I'm going fast from that, and I've got a tailwind obviously coming behind me. So I remember thinking, I should try and stall it. And I think had I stalled it as well, then I could have like landed on my back, my head. It could have been really nasty because there was a horrible like line of boulders to my left, and I knew I needed to stay away from that. And I thought I was like aiming for a bushy sort of area, and I hit a massive, great big boulder. I went slam straight into the face of it, and it's vertical basically.
Yeah. Basically, once the glider was fixed, you had a course in front of you where you had canyon side,
yeah,
and just rocks and bushes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like pick your spot to crash, essentially. So yeah, and like I put my feet up, the feet hit the boulder first, and then the glider overflew me, and then I've like slid down off the boulder like a kind of Wile E. Coyote sort of thing. And I must have put my left elbow and my left arm out to catch that fall. And that's when I broke my left elbow and my left wrist. And then I remember seeing like the glider laid out in front of me. And the wind was still coming up the canyon. And I just remember looking at it thinking, man, I can't get dragged up this canyon.
Yeah.
So I stood up. Immediately as I stood up, I felt like this crunch in my foot. And I knew it wasn't good, but at the same time, I knew I had to unclip and I couldn't unclip when I was lying down because there was too much tension in it. So I unclipped really quickly and then basically lied back down and thought, okay, well, like there's no massive holes in me. I kind of checked my body over. I was like, I'm generally okay. The foot's pointing in the wrong direction and clearly hurts. It's messed up, but I'm okay. So I was like, I'm not moving. At this point, I'm happy here. I can live with lying here for a while I assess the situation. And then like Luis came circling overhead, and I remember hearing shouting like, Andy, Andy. I think he then phoned emergency services, and then he started trying to get to me. I think it took him like 45 minutes to get to me, over a couple of hundred meters, because he had to go down a canyon, up a cliff, and then down into the next canyon.
And the local emergency response, were they pretty good getting you off the mountain?
Yeah, they were pretty good. So like when Luis finally arrived at the top of the canyon, which I was in, he got back on the phone to them, and he was kind of, asking about my injuries and stuff like that. And then he was like saying, is there any way down here? Because he was standing on top of a cliff, basically. It would have been a monumental effort from a lot of people to try and get me out there without a helicopter. And I think the helicopter came I think it was around 2 hours after the crash, something like that. And by that time, Luis was kind of down with me. He'd like gathered the wing up so it was safe for the helicopter to land. We'd been standing there chatting away, joking away and stuff like that. So, and I reckon potentially that the right foot got stuck between me and the rock, and the weight of me and the harness then came in and smashed it and crushed it.
Yeah.
Because I'm in a big comp harness, it's got so much padding in it. But that's a theory, do you know what I mean? We're talking milliseconds about, so.
Yeah, it didn't mean an injury would have been something slightly different on this different part of the rock.
This is it, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think overall, I got away relatively lightly with it, although it's going to be, how it will recover, I don't know. It could have been so many different parts for us. Could have been like, the back, the neck, the head, the hip, the pelvis, could have been all of these things, and it wasn't. So, and I think part of that is maybe flying a comp harness as well. Comp harness, you're in a big armchair, floating armchair surrounded by padding. So I was insured. I had BMC, British Mountaineering Council insurance.
Yeah.
They were absolutely rocking. They were awesome. The helicopter, I don't know whether I know the helicopter I'm told in Tenerife is like included, not in your travel insurance. It's like it is in the UK. But whether they then charge your travel insurance for it for the hell of it, I don't know. I've got no idea. So the helicopter came, hovered overhead. They lowered someone down who stuck my foot in a splint. I waved goodbye to Luis. Left poor Luis on his own. And they deserted in a canyon, having to climb a cliff to get back out as well. So no, the rescue was great. They took me down to the like a landing place, stuffed me into an ambulance, and then by the time I got to the hospital, kind of the pain was starting to build. I think the adrenaline at this point is kind of subsiding. Yeah. And then they pumped me full of morphine, and then more morphine, and then more morphine. And then they gave me a load of papers to sign in Spanish. But whatever, yeah, here you go. Essentially, they had to like manipulate everything, put all the bones back into place. They put 3 long steel rods in to try and hold stuff in place. They drilled that into bones, and then I had these bits poking out my skin. So it looked a little bit like sort of Frankenstein's foot. I hope maybe by the end of March I'll be walking, hopefully, maybe. We'll see. It's step by step, see how it goes, To be fair, I was super relaxed. I probably was a little bit slow on the inputs. I mean, I must have been. I've got a 50% collapse. If you're on it, most of the time you're not going to get that collapse in the first place. Do you know what I mean? As it's happening, you're already pumping the brakes. So I must have been a bit slow to start off with. If you fly in a competition, right, I'm 100% focused. I'm like, right, climb out, get to a good place, and then I can relax a bit when I'm 1,000 meters above launch or whatever. But I'm so focused, and I know what I've got to do, and I've done all my checks and everything like that. And I know as soon as I've launched, I'm like, I'm on it, basically. When I'm free flying, I'm not like that. When I'm free flying, like, yeah, you clip in, but you've just got your routine that you clip in. I don't have a checklist that I go through. I go through the checklist in comps, but not when I'm free flying. Yeah. Because it's, I can just go and land and sort it out if it's a problem.
It's just a bit of a jolly.
So yeah, exactly. So, and I think that's maybe it. Like, I was super relaxed. I'm not in like full combat mode. I had nothing to make me think I needed to be in full combat mode. The previous days had been really benign conditions, really super smooth. So I think that's probably it. I was just, I was flying without being totally on it. I would say that's probably one of the big differences. If you're flying a comp glider, you should really be totally on it whenever you're flying. They're not particularly forgiving. But, unless you are practicing this stuff on a regular basis, that's not going to be the first thing that comes into your head. Do you know what I mean? The first thing that came into my head was get the glider open, get the glider flying, so I have control. Yeah. And then by the time I had the glider open and flying, it's way too narrow and I'm too close to the ground to be able to turn it to come out. Once the glider started turning, I could have let it continue to turn. Yeah. But then it could have ended up diving down to the ground a bit, and I could have ended up hitting the ground going at 60 kilometers an hour, going down like that. Yeah. I might have scraped out. I might have had 10 meters to spare doing that. Yeah. I will never know. That's something I'll never know.
That's a very tricky call, to let a collapse turn you.
Yeah.
Because, as you say, it can bite.
Yeah.
And it's just a few degrees difference between swinging out nicely and losing 50 meters.
Yeah.
And that would be horrendous. So you've done this best as you can in that situation. The only thing I wondered was, would it have been possible if you'd practiced swoop flare, fly on the wall type landings, where you see a slope coming up at you, that you could actually accelerate and swoop and climb? Did you have enough space for that, or is that just a fantasy?
I've not practiced that. I had enough space for it. Whether what was in front of me would have actually been a sensible place to even attempt that anyway, because you got to remember there's cactus, 2 meter boulders, then there's lots of 1 meter boulders all on top of it. So it's kind of that might have worked, but as I say, I haven't practiced it. And secondly, I think it's the time as well that I had. It's I think from the initial collapse to crash I think it was about 10 seconds, something along those lines. Yeah. Part of that 10 seconds is getting the glider back open. And then as soon as it would have been back open, I've had a dive. And then I guess that would have been the moment to then go, right, let's do that. It's a hostile environment there, man. Yeah. It's volcanic boulders and rocks, and the soft bits of the cactus.
Hopefully that helps you prepare a little bit for asymmetric low levels. As you can see, it leaves you very little option when you haven't got altitude to play with. So if you learn anything from this, it's give yourself a safety margin, because it's very difficult to come up with the right input, the right way to avoid the crash when you're so low that the collapse takes away all your altitude. So if you give yourself just that extra bit, double what you think you need, then you've got a little bit of space, and it just gives you so many more options, because you've got angles off the mountain and you're not committed to what Andy had, which is just you have to land on whatever's in front of you. And sometimes it's a bush and sometimes it's a rock. And unfortunately, Andy got the rock, and I think, as you said, you had a fairly good outcome given the situation, and hopefully you make a full, quick recovery, but it's something to be aware of, so take care, guys.
Yeah, don't crash, it hurts.
Back to your